Hey, what is up, you guys? It is the GameMaker Tutorial X here with another tutorial, and we're going to be going over more on scripting, like in the last tutorial. So I just whipped open the project we made last tutorial so nobody will get confused, and we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. So the last tutorial we made a simple character that moved to the right, but we did it all via scripting. So, pretty cool. Alright, so more into scripting. So go ahead and open your script movement or whatever you called it, and we'll maximize this, okay? So like we said in the last tutorial, if is called a conditional statement, and in between these two parentheses, don't get confused with these two, but these two glowing, is the condition that it tests to be true. And if it is true, then it executes what's inside of this block. And a block is a group of statements. And remember, after each statement, unless it's a block, you need a line terminator, which is a semicolon. Alright, and we also went over a little bit on functions, okay? And that is keyboard check, and then remember, functions are just like a name to a block of code that always happen. Don't get confused with this. This is a conditional statement. Now, in this tutorial, we're just gonna go ahead and make movement for all the all directions. So to do that, once again, make a new conditional statement, and we use that same function, keyboard check. And like I said, every key begins with VK underscore, and then maybe left, and we need parentheses, and we need our block. And if I'm going too fast or you're confused, please feel free to post in the comments. Now to move left, we have to do that. We have to go negative on the x-axis, which is left. Now, the y-axis is reversed, and it is for many graphic frameworks and engines. So go ahead and type VK up, make your block. Oop, fuck. And make your block. Alright, now, the way to go up, since the y-axis is reversed, and it is for most graphical engines, you have to subtract from the y-axis. So forget what you know about math. The x-axis is the same, the y-axis is flipped. So just remember that, okay? To go up, you actually have to subtract from y rather than add to it. And to go down, it is the opposite of up, so you have to add to it. Now this is confusing at first, but it goes for many graphical engines. It's not just GameMaker, so it's helpful to get used to this. So we're going to go ahead and check, save, and run this real quick. I'm just going to keep that open and make sure that our conditional statements are correct. As you can see, we can move, we can go diagonal, and the movement is much more fluid than using a keyboard event. And that is because this script is going at a much faster rate, is checking at a much faster rate, and since all of these are ifs, since it's all testing every single one of these, it allows you to go diagonal and in certain directions that regular keyboard events would not let you do. So there is some advantages to scripting. The main one is control. So that's pretty cool. And like I said, up is negative and down is positive. So that can get kind of confusing. Now, this is all kind of review. We went over this. X is a variable. Once again, placeholder for value. So we're just subtracting from it, not equally, like setting it to it. Assignment statement. And we're giving it, we're subtracting 5 from it. Now, this is pretty simple. This is basically what you're going to be using majority of the time in GameMaker is what's called conditional statements, like I said. Now, what if we wanted to test two simultaneous conditions? Like, let's say we have x and y, we want them to equal a certain value, but we want it to be all one condition, so it executes something specific. Well, there's something called the AND operator. Now this AND operator takes two conditions between these two parentheses for a conditional statement and basically tests both of them and even if one is false, the entire thing is false, so it does not execute. So let me give you an example. So let's say to move right, we need to check and make sure that right key is down, and we want, I don't know, the P key to be down. Let's use that. Now there's two different ways to use the AND operator. You can type the word AND, but like I said, I'm going to use the more advanced style so you get used to it more if somebody requests for a C++ or Java tutorial. Double ampersand is basically like computer language for AND, okay? So think of this like one conditional statement and another, except they're both tested and they both have to be true to execute this block. So after this AND, treat it like another condition. You have to type out the entire thing again. So what's the other condition? We want to check to see if the key, what is it, the P key? I gotta look for individual letter keys. If they have them, maybe they don't. Let's just say shift then. Or shift. Right shift. Okay. So you still have your, this is all one condition because it all still has two parentheses. But like I said, this AND, computer language for AND, joins these two conditions basically into one because they both have to be true for this to go. So let's go ahead and run this, and you'll see I can't press right to move. I have to hold the right shift and right to move. You see how that works? If I'm just pressing shift, I'm not going to go right. If I'm just pressing right, I'm not going to go right. These two conditions both have to be true simultaneously. One cannot be false. Okay? Now let's say maybe you wanted two conditions in one conditional statement, but you wanted it so if either of them were true to go. Now there is another operator called the OR operator. And you can kind of talk this out in English. You can say, if we're pressing on the right key and we're pressing on the right shift key, do this. If we're pressing on the right key or we're pressing on the right shift key, do this. Now once again, you can just type OR to do two conditions, but I like to use the double straight line. That is what Java and C++ use. The double straight line is the key above enter, and you have to hold shift to do it. And it's two of them. Once again, this is computer language. These two things are computer language for OR. Now, this is two separate conditions, but this time, one can be false and one can be true. If any one of them is true, it will execute this. And I'm going to go ahead and run this and show you. So if I press right key or shift key, shift, right, both, if any of them are true, it goes. These are called the, the logical OR operator and the logical AND operator. Those are very important to get down because the if statement is called an if statement, is really important. Okay, now let's say maybe we didn't want to divide these conditions up, okay? So let's take that away. We just have one condition. Let's say maybe we wanted a chain of conditional statements, but we wanted it so if one tested false, that we don't want to do the rest of them. Now there's something called an else if statement. It chains together with an if statement, and if the if the if statement is false, if this is false, it skips over the chain. You see how every single one of these executes? If we changed each one to an else if statement, if it's false, skip them rest. If this one is true, we don't want the rest of these to execute. We would use else if for these instead of if. So it's what you would call a chain, okay? If one link in the chain is true, it skips the rest of it. Now let me show you a demonstration. Now, the way you do an else if statement is you type else space if, and then it works exactly like a conditional statement with a condition and a block. So maybe keyboard check R or VK R shift. Ooh, no, I had it. Okay. Once again, it has its block. Now, these two are a chain. This whole thing is not a chain. Every if, else if, until the next if is a chain. And I'm sorry if that's confusing. Like, these two are a chain, and since I started using if again down here, it's totally separate, and it'll test all of these. If this one's true, it's still going to test the rest of these. If this one's true, it's going to skip this one. That's why you would use an if, else if, like, chain. Okay? So let's just have it, so either one, okay? If one of them's true, we don't want it to move right, again. We don't want both of these to happen, okay? So let's go ahead and run this. So if we press right, I'll move right, and if I press shift, we move shift. If I press both, we still move, but that's because the human reaction time only allows us to press one before the other, and computers run millions of calculations a second. If somehow we press both at the same time, both of these would be false, because we're pressing like both of them. Okay, I mean, actually, I think these would be both true, so it'd be some sort of weird thing, but either way, we're pressing one of these. Okay, so that's basically how you do it. Now let's do something special for shift. Let's add to the Y so that we go down as well as to the right. So that way we can tell. Okay. So if we press right, we just go right. If we press shift, you go diagonal. Okay. So that's cool. And if you'll notice, if we had both of these as two ifs, and no, it's a bad example. Well, that's basically just how you separate it, okay? If you ever need like separation, and this will come in more handy when you start using variables, not really keyboard checks, and this is kind of a bad example. But the sooner you understand this chain concept, the better, because, once you need to test something and it's true, and like, let's say we have, more else ifs, okay, and it was a big long chain. Let's say this one was true. It would skip the rest of these. Anywhere, any link in the chain, if it's true, it skips the entire rest of them, okay? Now, let's say we have a chain, right? And let's say if we want something to happen if both of these are false, all right? If it keeps moving through the chain, and maybe we want something to happen no matter what, if everything is false, how do we do that? That is called an else statement, and I like to think of that as the end of the chain. I like to think of the if as the first link in the chain, and the else as the last link in the chain. All these else if just kind of are the length of the chain, okay? And you literally just type else, and this time you do not put a condition at all, because this is what's going to happen if none of our links in our chain are true. So let's just have Y go up by like 10 so we know. Okay. So as you'll see, we'll just start moving the second I play this, because we're not pressing right or shift. As you can see, I fly down. This is because we're not, and it's constantly checking this. As long as we don't press any of these, the last link in the chain will always go, because none of these are true. But if one of these are true, it's going to skip over everything, even the else. Okay, this only happens if, I like to say all else fails, do this. So good way to think of it. Now this is the key concept you want to understand. Chains, else if, the or and the and operators. You really need to get that down. That is essential to programming, is testing conditions, and that is like a majority of programming, like literally. It's really important to know how to test conditions when you need to, make a chain when you need to, test two conditions at the same time, both true, maybe just one of them instead of the other. It's important to get that concept down. Now, in the next video, I'll probably still go over more scripting. The scripting is going to be a lot of videos, because the scripting is extremely important, especially when we get to 3D. It's important you know all the concepts. So I will see you guys in the next tutorial.